Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for joining us here at the Missouri MBDA Center in our collaboration with MODOT and the City of St. Louis for our DBE certification training put on by MODOT's External Civil Rights Department. The infrastructure bill, as we all know, was signed and approved November the 18th, a $1 trillion bill to help the infrastructure of the United States of America. This infrastructure bill will help and assist with transportation, roads and bridges and railways. Also, it would help with broadband and utility. And so we here at MBDA have partnered with our strategic partner, MODOT, and the City of St. Louis to help get more companies, minority-based companies, certified, DBE certified, to be ready when the infrastructure funds are sent down to the state. So please pay close attention, get your pens and pencils out, be ready to learn. And now I would turn it over to Christy Hickson, who is the Internal Civil Rights Manager for MODOT.
Great. Thank you, Todd. As Todd mentioned, I am Christy Hickson. I am the External Civil Rights Manager for the Missouri Department of Transportation, which going forward we'll refer to as MODOT. I'm so glad that you could join us today for this Lunch and Learn. On the session with me today, I have two external civil rights staff members, Zainab Jasm and Laura Boslow. I'm going to give a little bio of them both. Zainab Jasm is a senior civil rights specialist at MODOT and has been with the department for almost 6 years. Throughout her time in the division, she has worked on DBE certifications, on-the-job training programs, EEO contract compliance, and workforce diversity. Ms. Jasm currently serves as the Title VI and ADA coordinator, as well as works to develop both internal and external trainings, forms, and processes. Prior to joining MODOT, Zainab earned a dual Bachelor of Arts in English and Political Science from Truman State University. And Laura Boslow has been a civil rights specialist with MODOT since 2017. Her duties include DBE certification, on-the-job training program, EEO contract compliance, and workforce diversity. She enjoys assisting DBE firms in meeting their goals for growth. Prior to joining MODOT, Ms. Boslow worked as an EEO officer for a local workforce development board and as an independent living coordinator with a nonprofit advocating for individuals with disabilities. Ms. Boslow holds a bachelor's in human service from Evangel University in Springfield, Missouri. In her spare time, she spoils her grandson and participates in patient advocacy research as well as care and improvement outcomes for pediatric rheumatology patients. The goal of this Lunch and Learn is to provide you with information regarding the DBE certification process with MODOT and how to apply for that DBE certification. I'll remain on the call for a little while, but unfortunately I have another appointment, so I'll be leaving the call around 1:30-ish. So I am now going to turn it over to Zainab and Laura to start the presentation.
Thank you, Christy. Good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad to be here, and we're thankful for the MBDA to give us this opportunity to share information about certification with the DBE program. So today we're going to cover several things. We're going to talk about DBE eligibility requirements, the certification application and documents that are necessary for processing that, the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS, expansion codes, and the Missouri Regional Certification Committee partners that we have, and those are all partners that you can actually submit your applications with. The eligibility for DBE certification, your firm, first of all, has to be a for-profit business. It must be owned, at least 51% owned and controlled by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual or individuals. There can be multiple owners as long as 51% meet that requirement. You have to have, as the owner, a personal net worth of less than $1.32 million. The owner must be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. And the firm has to have annual gross receipts with a cap of $28.48 million. And that was just changed effective March 1st. They just increased it some. So that may be something that you may notice is a little higher if you're familiar with DBE requirements. So the first question is, who is considered socially disadvantaged? According to the regulation, it's women, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, subcontinent Asian Americans, and other groups designated by the Small Business Association. There can be a small case-by-case percentage of people that would qualify based on their individual experiences with discrimination. So if you by chance have any questions about that, just contact our office and we can assist you from there. How do you apply for DBE certification? So the very first step is to complete the uniform certification application and also the personal net worth form. And we're going to go through the uniform application step by step so that you can see what the application looks like and know what it is we're looking for. We'll also cover some of the most common things that we see that can cause delays in us being able to process your application, so that we can make sure that when you do submit an application, it's as complete as possible, and that just speeds the process up. So Zainab's going to open the link for us. And we'll go through each of those. And also, if you have questions, you can enter them into the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to them at the end of the session. So the application itself is linked from our website, so you can find it there, and you'll see where she's going. Once you get to the external civil rights web page, we have a link for DBE, and you would click on that, and it's at the very top of the list of documents that were in that box that she showed you. So I'm going to first ask her to make this a little bit bigger for me. And I'm sure I won't get any arguments on that. Thank you, Zainab. And what you'll notice at first when it opens is you have several pages of instructions. When you're completing the application, I highly encourage you to look at the instructions for each section to see what it says, so that when you're entering your information, you're entering in the correct amount of information, and it'll be exactly what we're looking for, so that when we receive the application, we don't have questions regarding those sections and have to then get clarification from you. So the first page, actually, it starts on, I think it's page 5 is actually the first page of the application. So you're going to enter in on this section A of basic contact information, the contact for the person who's completing the application. Sometimes that will be the owner, the majority of the time. Sometimes that'll be someone who works for the firm who's been assigned the task of doing that. So we need to know who it is we contact if we have questions regarding the application, but also that we have all of that person's information, their email, phone number, so that when we have questions, we know exactly who to contact, and it just makes things easier on our end and on yours. So you're going to put all that contact information. You're going to put in phone numbers, fax number, emails. If you have a website for your firm, you'll enter that. Both your street address, and then if you have a mailing address that's different, you'll enter that as well. And then as you go down, you're going to answer the question whether your firm is currently certified under the US DOT programs for either DBE or ACDBE, and the names of those of the agency that certified you. Now, this is going to come into play if number one, if you're already certified, but number two, when you're applying, say you're a firm in Illinois and you're applying for certification in the state of Missouri. So we're going to need to know what firm it was that did your certification in your home state, because we reach out to them and we get some copies of documents from their files as well. So if your firm is not currently or is currently certified, the next thing that you enter is the date of your site visits that were conducted at your company. Whether or not your firm was denied any certifications as an DBE or as a MWBE. And then if you are already certified, that is where you stop your application for Missouri. If you are not already certified, you then continue. So you're going to enter in your information with your business profile. You're going to tell us basically what services your firm provides. You're going to then categorize your work by NAICS code. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but the NAICS codes, what they do is they tell us what areas of work that your firm is able to complete. And if you have any questions, if you're not already certified and you're not sure how you'd fit into that, you can give us a call and we'll help you narrow it down. There is a great website we're going to share later that you can look up where you can put in what it is you do. If you work in concrete, you would enter concrete, maybe concrete supply, and it's going to help you find a code that applies to that. But like I said, if you need help, please contact us. We'd be more than happy to help you with that. Your third question under that is going to be the date your firm was established, and then the date that you have owned the firm. So if you established the firm, of course, those dates will match. If you bought it, then it will probably differ. So we'll need those dates. And then on the next page, how did you acquire the firm? Did you start it? Did you buy an existing business? Did you inherit it? Was it gifted, etc.? And then the next question is, if your firm is for profit. If it is not, you're not eligible, so it tells you to stop the application. Otherwise, you're going to put in your federal tax ID number. You're then going to tell us what the legal business structure of your firm is, whether you're a sole proprietorship, limited liability partnership, regular partnership, corporation, LLC, etc. We do need to know for question number 8, how many employees work for your firm, whether they're full or part-time, seasonal. And then you're going to tell us what your firm's gross receipts have been. So this one, Christy, correct me if I'm wrong, is now for 5 years. Is that correct? And they have not updated the form. So this is a new change. Previously, we've had where we've collected 3 years of tax returns to get your company's gross receipts to calculate an average. We're now using 5 years of tax receipts for that. So this form has not been updated. So if you're applying, you can make a note of that to include 5 years. If you don't, we'll just send you a letter asking for that information. The next part of the application covers relationships and dealings with other businesses. If your firm is associated with any other companies, that is where you're going to include this information. It comes down to anything from sharing space to a post office box, equipment and inventory, office staff, etc. So this is where you would explain any of those business relationships. If there is another firm that has an ownership interest in your firm or has had, you're going to put that on that second question on that page. Then following is going to be, you're going to check whether your firms existed under different ownership, existed as a subsidiary of any other firms, or a partnership of one form or another. If you've owned any percentages of any other firms, had any subsidiaries, or served as contractor with another firm constituting more than 25% of your firm's gross receipts. The next pages cover your information on your owners. So the first page is on your majority owner. Of course, if you have more than one person combining for that 51% ownership, you would fill out this information for each of those 51% that make up the 51% ownership. So you can make an additional copy. You could do it within Adobe since the application is an Adobe form. If you need to do it on paper, that's fully understandable, but there's several pages that cover for owners. So you're going to put in this person's name, title, home, phone number, address information. We need to know their gender and then their ethnic group membership and whether or not they're a U.S. citizen. How many years they've been an owner, the percentage of the stock that they own, the class of stock, and the date that it was required. We also need to know their initial investment amounts and how those were made, and then how the business was acquired. We do need to know of any family relationships to other owners or employees, and that would be in that section B that you see there. And then whether or not this owner performs a management or supervisory function for any other businesses, you would answer yes or no, and if yes, you would identify the name of that business and that person's title within that other business. If you as the owner work another job, we do need to have that information as well, or if you own any other company. So that would be in that section 3A where that goes. On that section 3B is, does this owner work for any other firm, nonprofits, engage in any activity more than 10 hours per week? That would be listed there. And then the next section starts where your personal net worth information. We'll cover that form in a little bit. But once you complete the personal net worth form, you would then transfer the calculated personal net worth onto this 4A on this page. If you have a trust that has been created for your benefit, you would respond yes, and then provide information on the trust. And then whether you have any immediate family members, managers, employees that own or associated with any other companies. We do need to have that information. So that was on that page 7, section 5, where you would enter that. The next page covers any other owners. Again, as I said, if there's more than one person that makes up that 51% interest, then you're going to include them as a majority owner. But say you have a 49% or lesser owner that is a non-disadvantaged individual, this is where you're going to put that information as well. So it's got all the same information on the owner as the other page that we covered. And we'll skip down to the next one. So this section 4 starts the controls. So we need to have you list your firm's officers, board of directors, with all of their information. And we need to know if those officers or directors are involved in any other businesses as well. So you would add that information. And then whether or not any of the persons listed own or work for any other firms that has a relationship with your firm. So if you have any questions regarding those or any other parts of this application, we really do want to assist you, so you can contact us while you're doing that. We'd be happy to help you if you have questions. Then you're going to break it down. You're going to put the duties involved in running the firm by individuals with the owners. So you'll check whether it's always, frequently, seldom, or never. And that just continues on. Let's see, you can keep going, Zainab. Thank you. Okay, and then you're going to inventory your equipment and vehicles. So we do have to have a list of those there. You're then going to describe your office space for us with the address and information, whether it's owned or leased and by whom and its value. We need to know if you have any additional storage space as well. If you rely on a payroll company to do your employee payroll. We need your banking information for bank accounts, who's able to sign checks on those accounts, bonding information, any money that's been loaned to your firm. Is that section F. So if you have any outstanding loans, you're going to put that information there. Any loans that were used to establish your firm and get it up and running would be included in that section as well. Section G is your contributions or transfers of assets to or from your firm, into and from any owners, etc. And then licenses or permits held by your firm. There are a few types of firms that in Missouri requires that the owner be licensed. And so if you're one of those firms, that's why that question is on there. For instance, architecture, the owner has to be an architect. So that's why that is there. We need to know about your 3 largest contracts that you've completed in the past 3 years. And then we also need to know your 3 largest active jobs that your firm is currently working on. And then let's see, if you're interested in airport concession, ACDBE certification, we have our partners, and the airports are who do those certifications. So the City of St. Louis Lambert Airport is one, and the other is the City of Kansas City with the Kansas City Airport. So they take care of those certifications. So if you're looking for both DBE and ACDBE, you're really going to want to apply with one of those because they can consolidate your process. But we can answer any questions if you have those. The last page that you submit, or the last page here that she's currently on, the affidavit, you're going to complete that. You're going to have it notarized with a notary before you submit it. And that would be with all owners have to, or all of your disadvantaged owners have to submit that because you're stating on that you qualify as a socially disadvantaged individual. And then this page 15 is the checklist. We highly encourage you to go through each item on this checklist so that when you're submitting your application, you submit a complete application and in full. And if something doesn't apply to you, you can write NA next to the item. And when you submit this, then we know that you didn't forget something. It just doesn't apply to you. And that covers the application. So I am going to pass on to Zainab, and she's going to talk about the personal net worth form that gets submitted. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Laura. Like Laura said, my name is Zainab Jassim. I'm a specialist here at MODOT. And we'll get started here. So what Laura just went over was the application itself. I will be going over, and that was, the primary part of it is the application, making sure to fill that out completely, as well as all of those supporting documents, making sure that at least all of those are acknowledged, if not submitted with your application. The second part of it is the personal net worth form. So we do have a link to this on our PowerPoint presentation, but you can also find it here. And I'm just going to open that up and start going through it. So not nearly as lengthy, only 5 pages instead of 15 to go through. This one, I believe there are instructions in the last couple of pages, and those can be very helpful when you're filling out this personal net worth form, because it can be confusing in terms of what you do or don't include in this personal net worth form. So just at the top here, you would be putting down the applicant's name. You want to make sure that for each applicant that makes up 51% ownership of the firm, 51% socially and economically disadvantaged ownership, that they each are filling it out. So for example, even if you have, let's say, for example, 3 owners, one owner owns 50%, another owner owns 1%, and those 2 owners are making up 51%, and they are both socially and economically disadvantaged, meaning that they are, minority as well as economically disadvantaged. They would both need to fill this form out. Otherwise, just that 51% owner would need to ensure that this is completed. Just ask for the basic information here, including address and phone numbers, the name of the firm. We ask for marital status as well as the spouse's full name. And this is due to the fact that, finances can be somewhat melded depending on marital status. And so as you're filling this form out, make sure that you indicate on any of these categories if they are jointly owned with you and a spouse. That's very important to know, because if it is jointly owned, we only count it as 50% ownership towards your personal net worth. And so in through here, and this is just kind of the top sheet of it, you'll want to make sure that you go through kind of the explanation parts of it as well, where you're specifically listing out everything that you're documenting up here. So the first thing is the cash and cash equivalents. So anything that you have in bank accounts, whether checking, savings, things like that, where you can readily have available. The face value of your retirement accounts. So that would be if you took out what is in your retirement account today, how much would you receive? Any brokerage and investment accounts, any assets that are held in trust, the cash amounts for those, any loans from you to the firm, other entities, individuals, and other receivables. And it does tell you on these which sections to complete. So I definitely recommend completing the section first, and then going back up here and filling out the total. And then making sure to include your any real estate that you own, excluding your primary residence. You'll notice that in that section 4, it actually does ask for your primary residence, as well as the value of that residence. We just want to make sure that that gets listed, but not counted up here in your total. And then the life insurance, if there's any of that, again, cash surrender value only, we're looking at today if that was taken out. Any other personal property and assets, that could include things like vehicles, household goods, jewelry, anything of that sort. Any business interests that you have in any other firms. So for, make sure you don't include, like, if you have company ABC Construction, don't include your interest in ABC Construction, but if you have ownership in another firm or some sort of interest in another firm, make sure you list the value of that. So all of that is going to be calculated as your total assets. And then here on your liabilities, any loans on life insurance, mortgages on real estate. Again, we're excluding that primary residence debt since we're also not counting it on the assets side. Any notes or obligations on personal property. And again, that corresponds to the personal property and assets. The notes in accounts receivable to banks and others, things like credit cards, any personal loans, things like that. Any other liabilities, as well as unpaid taxes. So, once you've completed this, you total up the assets, total up the liabilities, subtract assets from liabilities, and that's where you would get the personal net worth. And again, that cap is 1.32 million in order to be qualified as economically disadvantaged under the DBE program. So the rest of this, like I said, it might behoove you to kind of fill out the bottom portions first, because they're where you that's where you would list everything. So any notes payable to banks and others, you would list all of those. This section 3, brokerage and custodial accounts, any stocks, bonds, and retirement accounts. So the full value of those, and what you would receive if you took those out today. Again, here's your real estate owned, to include the primary residence, any investment properties, personal property that's leased or rented, farm properties, or other income producing property. And so here you'd list the primary residence. Again, make sure you don't include this in your assets and liabilities, just listing that here. And then any other properties you would list. And then you could include additional pages if there's more than 3 properties there. Here is the any life insurance held. Again, that cash surrender amount is what we're looking for here. And then any other personal property and assets, and it gives a few examples here of what you would list. So automobiles and vehicles, all different types of those, any household goods and jewelry, any loans that the owner has given to the firm, other entities, individuals, basically anyone that owes you money as an individual, not your company. And then any other assets, personal property assets that you may have. This section 7, again, is that value of other business investments, other businesses that are owned. So it can be any type of business that the owner has an interest in. And then any other liabilities or unpaid taxes. And this section 9 asks about the transfer of assets. If within the last 2 years of this statement, if you've transferred assets to a spouse, domestic partner, relative, or entity in which you have an ownership or beneficial interest, including a trust. So you would answer that and describe it if the answer is yes. And like the application, there is a spot for the owner to sign, date, as well as get the form notarized. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a couple pages here of instructions on how to fill this form out, and so it's very detailed. I would definitely recommend reading through this before you go through it, and maybe even refer back to it as you're filling the personal net worth form out. So that is what that looks like. So when you are ready, so let's say you have completed your DBE application that we went over, you have all of your documents in order, all of your supporting documents, you've completed your personal net worth form, gotten that and the application notarized, you're ready to submit your application. The best way to do so is through our Dropbox, which there's a link here to upload those. And so once you click on that, it'll open up a new page, and you can either select files or drag and drop them in. I definitely recommend having them all in one folder or one file. That way you're just dropping them in all at once, and you make sure that it all gets there. And so once it's sent off, our executive assistant will process that application. She'll assign it to a specialist, and they'll start reviewing it. One thing I also wanted to mention was that we do have a couple of resources on here. We did talk about earlier the NAICS code resource. Essentially, you know, as the business owner, you know what your business does. Oh, and I need to fix that link. Oh, okay. I really was on this website, I believe. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we'll make sure that gets fixed if there's something wrong there. But and we do have this link on our presentation as well. This is kind of where you would search for those NAICS codes. So if you're not completely sure where your firm would fall into, there's lots of different codes. You know, some of them really can overlap, and you can search by keyword, which I really like because, you know, who can remember a 6-digit number, especially if there's, you know, if your company is engaged in multiple scopes of work. And so you can kind of see, you know, the different types here. Let's see. So for this first one, you know, and this is really pulling all of the codes that have concrete in it as that trigger word. And so just be mindful of that. So when you click on this 237 310 code, it's highway, street, and bridge construction. It's a very general code. But down here, it gives you the corresponding index entries. So you can kind of see, you know, what all is included in this. And that's really kind of what you would look at. So, you know, if I were a firm looking through here, I would probably look at several of these just to make sure that I have the most narrowly defined code. So if there's a code that fits more closely with what your firm does, that's not as broad a code as highway, street, and bridge construction, then, you know, definitely kind of look at that to see if that's a better fit, because you definitely want to tailor it to be as specific as possible. So for example, this code, poured concrete foundation structure contractors, you know, that's much more specific to you know, concrete contractors that are pouring, finishing concrete, things of that sort. And, you know, you can really list as many codes as you feel is appropriate for your firm, because that in the end, if once a firm is certified, that's how we know they are eligible for those types of work. And so if there's a scope of work that your company conducts, but you don't have the code listed for it in your certification, then we are not able to count that credit. So it's really important to get that right. And again, we'll work with you as you submit your application. If we feel like a different code would suit your firm better, we'll definitely talk through that. Right, and I will get back to my presentation here. All right, and so, like I said, submit all those documents to that Dropbox. In total, it can be a 90-day process from the receipt of all necessary documents. We do conduct an on-site for Missouri-based firms. Like I said, we looked at that NAICS code lookup tool. There is also the SBA size standards, and that link just takes you to the table. So once you've determined which codes you think your company is eligible for, you could then look at those size standards to see if your firm meets, you know, those size standards, because there is that overall cap of 28.48 million of gross receipts, but then there is also a cap per code, which could be less than that 28.48 million. Right. And so timeline as far as certification. So once you submit that complete application, you're then contacted by a specialist within 2 weeks for any additional information that we may need. We would then schedule an on-site visit once all of that documentation is received, or we may even ask you to bring some of those documents at the time of the on-site. And more recently, we have conducted those virtually through Teams. We are at some point here going to move to more in-person on-site visits, and typically that would be the specialist that's handling your application would come to your place of business and interview you, ask you about your business, how it started, the history, the management and the operations, as well as take a tour of the business itself. Sometimes it's just an at-home business, and that's completely fine. There's many businesses, that's how they start. But we'll meet you there and get all of that information. And then a final application decision is then rendered within 90 days of receipt of your complete application. And so that's kind of what the timeline that we're looking at. And so I guess, with all of this funding coming through that Todd spoke about earlier, make sure you get your application in, because you don't want to be, a couple weeks away from bids being due and needing your DBE certification. There's just, it's not really a good way for us to expedite that that quickly. Maybe if you have all your ducks in a row and we don't have any other certifications pending, we might be able to pull that through. But definitely the earlier the better as far as getting those applications submitted and having them complete is really essential, because I think a lot of times the delay comes with not having all of the required documents. And then us having to request those. All right, so this next section is on interstate certification. So this would apply to your firm if you are currently DBE certified in another state. So in a state that is not Missouri. And so I will go through here on the required documents for that. And I'm going to go back to, and so like this is the ECR page. And again, there's a link on the PowerPoint, but you would make sure you submit the DBE interstate affidavit. And all that really is that you're stating that you're submitting all of the required documents. We just want to make sure we have that the name of your firm, you affirm that your information is complete and is an identical copy of information that you submitted to whichever certifying agency that you are currently DBE certified in. So anyway, it's just really an affidavit saying that you've submitted everything that's required. And this DBE interstate certification checklist is really what we're looking for here as far as the DBE applicant and what they need to make sure to submit. So for the first thing is going to be a complete copy of your application form, all supporting documents, and any other information that was submitted to State A. And we're referring to State A as your home state, the state that your business is based out of. And so essentially, when you were first certified as a DBE in your home state, we want that original application as well as all of the documents that were submitted at that time. So things like affidavits of no change, any notices of change that have been submitted, any correspondence concerning the firm's application or status as a DBE firm. So any of that pertinent information, of course. Typically, we would like to see everything that is on the checklist. We understand that may not always be the case, but we will likely ask to know if that was something that had been submitted to your home state. One question that we do get asked for this is that You know, let's say a firm has been certified in their home state since 1998, and they're like, I have no idea where my application is. I'm not sure how to go about doing that, especially that we're asking for that original application. And really the intent of that is to make it easier for firms to apply for certification, so that they're not having to recreate a bunch of documents. But we understand there's circumstances like that that would make it more difficult. Kind of your two choices there are to either see if your home state has a copy of your original application. If not, really the only other choice there is to submit that new application, but we do have to have something there. Let's see, the next checklist item is notices or correspondence from states other than the home state relating to the status as a DBE applicant. So any certification denials, any decertification actions, things like that, we want to make sure we have. Disclosure of any DOT certification appeals with a copy of the letter of appeal and DOT's response. So this would be in the case of if your firm had applied for DBE certification, was denied certification or decertified, and your firm had appealed that decision to US DOT. So things like that. And then that affidavit that they're adhering to, that they've submitted all of this information that we've listed here. So that's kind of the interstate certification process. You would do the same exact thing here where you would go to the Dropbox link, upload all those documents through there. And then and I will switch back to my presentation here. And so with that, you know, kind of similar, once all of those documents are submitted, the firm is then contacted by a specialist within 2 weeks for any additional information. With that, there's no on-site that's required because we do obtain that from the home state certifying agency. We would then give that final application decision within 60 days of the receipt of the complete application. Right. So kind of switching gears here a little bit. This is something, you know, I think is important to really think about as a firm that's contemplating applying for certification. You know, whether you qualify, and if you qualify, would you benefit from this program? And so, you know, from our experience, your firm would benefit if you're providing products or services to the transportation industry. This can include roads, bridges, rail, waterways, airports, transits, and bike or pedestrian. So a firm may be supplying products, hauling products, furnishing and installing, or providing professional services on any of these types of transportation projects. And, you know, I know people generally think of, you know, construction firms and things like that when they're thinking about transportation, but there really are a lot of opportunities here. You know, especially when you look at airports, if you're in the retail or service industry, you know, there may be an opportunity there at an airport concessionaire to supply products to a gift shop or to a restaurant or different things like that. So don't discount it just because your firm isn't strictly in construction. Or a related field. Just kind of look at those opportunities and see where your firm might be able to provide services or products. So the primary benefit of DBE certification is being able to only compete against other DBE firms for subcontracts. Certification also opens up firms for business coaching through MODOT's DBE Supportive Services program. And then DBE firms are also eligible to participate in MODOT's Mentor Protege program. All right, and one thing I wanted to touch on is that, so we do have the Missouri Regional Certification Committee, which MODOT is a part of. And so it's the Unified Certification Program that really all states have created to make sure that if a firm gets certified by one of these agencies, they're certified by all of them. It's really a one-stop shop. So you're doing only one application, and there's that reciprocity among agencies that receive federal funds and set DBE goals. So I have all of those partners listed here. I also do have the links to all of the partners that conduct DBE certification. I do want to note that if you desire any local minority or women-owned business certification with a local agency, such as the City of Kansas City or City of St. Louis, you might consider applying for DBE certification with one of those, as that may expedite your process. They might be able to complete both of those certification requests at one time, rather than having to go through two separate processes if you applied for DBE with MODOT and then a local WMBE application with a city organization. So something to think about if you're wanting both certifications. And then once certified, firms are listed in the MRCC directory. This is where prime contractors, vendors, where they're looking for DBE firms. So once certified, make sure to regularly check that and ensure that your firm's entry has the information is current. And if you have any updates, such as contact information, make sure you contact your certifying agency to get that information updated. And I know we didn't talk too much about ACDBE certification today, but if your firm is interested in becoming an airport concessionaire, which means you provide products or services as an airport concessionaire or provide products or services to existing concessionaires, you would want to apply with either the City of St. Louis Lambert Airport or the City of Kansas City, as all ACDBE applications go to them. And, you know, firms can be certified as both ACDBE and DBE, just depending on the types of services that they provide. All right, and since we have you all here, I wanted to highlight an upcoming event we have, which is our annual DBE symposium. It will be held March 29th from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. It'll be both in person at the Courtyard Marriott in Blue Springs, Missouri, which is just outside of Kansas City. And there is going to be a virtual option as well for attendance. And I have here the agenda as well as registration link for that event. And it is completely free. And just the next couple of slides is our ECR staff and their contact information. And again, we'll make these slides available to everyone. And with that, I believe I am turning it over to Todd.
Yes, thank you, Zaina. I'd like to thank MODOT and its internal civil rights team. What a great job and what a wonderful job you ladies have done for us, and I appreciate that. It's very important that, you know, these certifications are very important to your business. I say all the time that you don't start a business just to maintain it and keep it at a certain level. Everybody that has a business wants to scale. These opportunities for certification are out there for you to scale your business. As the infrastructure money begins to come down and these projects begin to take shape, get prepared now to seize the opportunity. I want you all to know that all the things that was mentioned in the slides is available to you. This particular presentation will sit on our website at the MissouriMBDACenter.com, where you can view it over and over again if you missed anything or for any kind of numbers or anything like that. Don't hesitate to call our offices, but we're there of assistance. Don't hesitate to call the MODOT offices as well. I'd like to thank you for attending today. I'd like to thank our managing partner, the Chicago Minority Supplier and Development Council. I'd like to thank the City of St. Louis, the Development SLDC. I'd like to thank MODOT and its internal civil rights team for a wonderful presentation. Please be looking out for the next webinar series where we'll be talking about how to actually go in and how to actually look and apply for these opportunities and pull these bids down. It is critical now that we are at a critical time within our country, that we are at a time where now businesses has the opportunity to scale coming out of this pandemic. Prepare yourself and be ready, and we are here to assist you. Again, thank you for attending our webinar. Bye-bye.